Hey, this is Howie Jacobson. This is a Plant Yourself podcast. It's been a while since I've done a walk and talk session, and so I thought I would do one now. It's a beautiful spring day. It's about 74 degrees, which is something in Celsius, 20 something, maybe 22. I don't know. Got to learn it. I've been trying to not just translate Celsius into Fahrenheit, like, oh, it's 61, it's 16, that must be 61, but really kind of getting the feel for what 16 feels like. So I don't have to do the translation, which is also what I'm trying to do as I'm learning Spanish, is to, match the sounds to concepts directly rather than trying to do the intermediate step of translation from English. Anyway, beautiful day. It's a bit breezy, so you may hear a susurrus. I can't hear it now. I am wearing my little, unfortunately named dead cat, which is the sort of fuzzy muff you see on microphones. It's blocking some of the wind, but I suspect at times when I'm walking in certain directions, you'll hear more than others. So we're going to start the walk heading through the campus of the IAB, the Institute of the Arts Barcelona. It's kind of like a music theater college or university, perhaps. So high level performance art stuff, and very often this time of day you'll have students out sort of chilling, practicing various things. So we'll see if we can get some snippets of music. Obviously you won't hear the dance, but let's see what we got. Not much right now. There's some quiet dance music going on from the studio, and students are stretching. And then up ahead, I see a couple of guys with gas-powered lawnmowers. So that's gonna be a fun noise. One was pulling the chain right now. I'm out walking because I had to get out of my house. I've been tired. I have had guests, and I didn't really have a weekend. This weekend or last weekend was a lot of running around, not much resting. And last Monday, today's Tuesday, a week ago Monday, I was biking and I braked abruptly to avoid a car, my fault entirely, and I went over the handlebars. So my legs are all bruised and are still recovering from that. So long story short, today I didn't have much to do after I dropped off my sister at the airport, came back, and I'm really tired. But there's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of stuff I want to do. And it's now after 2 in the afternoon. I thought, I just got to get out of the house. I got to get out and go somewhere, do something. And that's kind of the theme of what I want to talk about today, which is the idea of, am I getting away from something or moving towards something, right? Because if I walk out my door and I don't know where I'm going, then what happens is, I don't know, I could go in any direction, right? So the goal is not the house. So I could walk down the way I'm walking now. I'm going to be under the railroad tracks and heading towards the promenade and the Mediterranean. I could have headed the other direction up into the hills, into some old buildings and vineyards and this really fun and freaky old racetrack with built in the early 1920s, and it's one of the steepest banks of any racetrack in the world, but I think they only use it for a year or two. So I'm going to cross the street now because somebody's coming up, and looks kind of weird that I'm just talking to myself, although I suspect if I put an earbud in, it will seem more normal, but I'm a little self-conscious about that. Anyway, I could have gone west and walked to the shopping area. I could have continued sort of more southeast and gone to Villanova, the next town to the south. But until I have a destination, I'm just walking away from the house. And so now here I am. Maybe you can hear the echo. I'm under the train bridge and I'm away from home. So I've succeeded. I've accomplished that mission. But now what? So I decided I'm going to walk to the Mediterranean and take you along the promenades. Maybe we can hear some waves, and it's a Tuesday afternoon. I don't know how many people are going to be frolicking on the beach. We can catch some of that and then head into town It'll be siesta, so most of the stores will be closed, but there'll still be people around and some things will be open, while I continue to unpack my thoughts about this idea of getting away from versus moving towards. And it becomes important, specifically when we think about the problems in our lives. Right? So when I have a problem, I want to not have the problem. I want the problem to not exist. I want the problem to go away. I want to solve the problem. We have, this language of, oh, she's a real problem solver. It's like somebody who's very resourceful. And there are a bunch of problems with this approach, with looking at the problem and trying to solve it. And I want to talk about it first in terms of ourselves, and then second, and probably equally important, about talking with other people about problems as the language we can use to get better results. So now I'm crossing the main street, Passage de Villanova, continuing down into the quiet neighborhood, hopefully, of Vignette and Terramar, the fancy parts of town. So the problem with the problem is that it's like leaving my house but not knowing where to go. All I want is to not have the problem. And when I'm thinking about the problem, so maybe let's make this concrete. And I don't know, just take an example from the world of work. Say I have a colleague who's kind of semi-cluelessly undermining my efforts. Let's say we're in marketing, and I'm trying to cultivate very clean relationships with prospects, and this person is just sort of sending them spammy emails, and now I'm finding that they're not as responsive to invitations, to messages, they've some of them have opted out of the list, some of them have silently thrown us into spam, some of them are just not looking anymore. So I've got a problem with this colleague of mine, and let's say I don't have direct control over them, then I'm not their boss. I'm not their boss's boss. They're just someone who works adjacent to me, in the marketing department. And my efforts and my success and my status and my sense of fulfillment and my compensation are all being affected. So you say, I have a problem. So as I say this, as I'm making this up, my body is starting to respond as if it's real for me. So if it was real for me, I would be in a physical state that's related to a problem, that's sort of magnetized around the problem. And that physical state is essentially a threat response, a stress response to threat. Now, we have a stress response to threat, and you probably know all about it. You probably have felt it many times. You've read about it and heard about it. It's simplified. It's fight or flight. It's more complicated than that. It's got other elements in it as well. But basically, we orient ourselves to avoid the threat, to get away from it, to run away from it. If that's not possible, to become aggressive towards it, to fight it, to kill it, to scare it off, to injure it, to dominate and overwhelm and intimidate. So that's what's flowing through our body and our neurology. Those are the chemicals, those are the impulses, the thoughts, the emotions are all designed to keep us safe. Now, you may have noticed that none of those responses are particularly useful when we're talking about a colleague in an office who is messing with our email deliverability and responsiveness. So running away doesn't help. There's no situation in which actively fleeing from this person will accomplish anything. And similarly, there is no situation in which physically overwhelming them with force is going to work either. which means we have a mismatch. Now, if you've been following this podcast for a long time, you know about the idea of mismatch, or even if you haven't, you've heard or read this idea that our biology is suited towards a world in which the only food we could get was of limited quantities and whole natural foods that hadn't been adulterated with additives, with added flavoring, that hadn't had the fiber and the nutrients stripped out, and had concentrated sugar, fat, and salt added in. And so physically, we're talking about our diets and our urges. We have urges that are biologically based, that are completely mismatched with the environment in which we live. Dr. David Katz uses the metaphor I love of a polar bear in the Sahara, perfectly adapted to life at a frozen climb, dead in minutes in the Sahara, because has no way of not standing out and no way of shunting away the heat. So that same mismatch that occurs with the polar bear's thermic regulation and camouflage system, and that occurs with our biological taste preferences, is also going on whenever we encounter a problem. So the fact that the idea of a problem is something we want to avoid or overcome, and so it gets coded in our neurology as a threat. That was a very quiet BMW X5 that came out of nowhere from a garage, and luckily I stopped. So there's an example of a potential threat that I managed to avoid. And my heart did leap a little bit when I saw the big gleaming hood coming up right where I was standing. Okay, so we're at the beach now. And now we have the mingled sounds of ocean surf, sea surf, and whatever wind there still is. And hopefully this will be soothing and not annoying. Okay, so back to our story. When we code things as a threat, then everything becomes very simplified. Right? The parts of our brain that want to keep us alive don't really trust the higher brain that wants to think about things and assess all the options and play the angles and run scenarios and look creatively. Right? It takes way too long. It's way too risky. The primitive part of the brain just says, okay, kill it or run away from it. So what that means is that all the things I just mentioned, creativity, future consideration, the ability to view other people as social resources, all vanish in that instant when we are in fear or anger, essentially. Anger, kill it, bite it, tear it apart. Fear, run away from it, hide, get quiet and small. And which means that the problem becomes defined based on our neurology, which then determines what our brain can think about, becomes defined as how do I get rid of it? So we start plotting, how can I, get this person fired? Or maybe how can I, get them transferred to another division? Or maybe I can pretend to be an executive from another company and fake a phone call and get them to come, right? Or how do I, tell them to stop doing it? And the way we would tell them, depending on our personality and their personality and the other various other dynamics, might range from criticism, like stop doing it, anger, frustration, or the various polite passive-aggressive forms of the same thing, like, hey, could we have a talk for a minute? Hey, there's this little issue I want to chat with you about. Or, hey, we try to, smooth it over front and back with what we used to call a shit sandwich, where, two compliments with the real thing we want to talk about, smushed in the middle. Like, hey, really great job at the meeting yesterday. Listen, there's this thing that's really been bugging me, and I really appreciate your support on the Anderson account, right? But all they hear is the thing in the middle, right? So if you can, imagine someone's important to you saying, hey, can we talk? Okay. Just let that sink in and see what that does to your neurology right there. So when we are thinking of the problem, it's natural for us to become problem-oriented, which means kill or run away oriented, fight or flight. And as we've seen, neither of those enlists our best cognitive assets, our best social assets. Neither of those approaches is likely to get us what we want. Even you say, well, I got them fired, so that solved the problem. Well, letting somebody go, first of all, if you don't have the power to do it. So you're going to have to engage in all sorts of behaviors that may or may not be in line with your ethics and who you want to be as a person in order to get somebody else fired. It might be you might just go to the boss and say, hey, this is what's happening. I think so-and-so is really sabotaging what we're trying to do here and is not getting us and is not playing well as a team. And that might be an approach. But what I want to do, before I immediately jump to a fight or flight solution or find somebody bigger than me to hide behind who's going to do the fighting for me, I want to shift the mindset. I want to shift my thinking. And so this is where, instead of saying, okay, I just want to leave the house. That's the problem. I'm stuck in the house. I'm antsy. The immediate solution was just to leave the house and just walk away from the house. But the next question is, well, where do I want to go to? Now, I could wander aimlessly, but even that would be a decision. And it might be very nice to say, okay, what I'm going to do is go in any direction without giving it a thought and just sort of take a walk. But that in and of itself is different from, I got to get away from the house. That is a positive. That is a thing as opposed to the absence of the problem. So the magic question to ask when you feel yourself sort of either gripped emotionally by the problem, gripped sensationally, physically, when you're persevering over it, the thing to do is to ask yourself a simple question, and that is, what's the outcome that I want? And when you ask that question, the first thing that's going to come up for you is some version of the opposite of the problem. All right, it's like you're on the beach and someone dug a hole and there's a pile of sand, and the opposite of the pile of sand is the hole. So you just want to put the sand back in the hole. I want to unmake the problem. And there's a couple of problems. There's a couple of things about this that are less than optimal. One is we're still focused on the problem. And so we're still going to be coming at it from this fear, this threat mindset, which blocks all sorts of creativity. But the second thing is, it assumes that the best we can do is not have the problem, like to go back to zero, which is a pretty low bar. Because when you think about it, if you think about your life, most of the growth, I'm willing to bet, has come out of things you had wished hadn't happened. Things that were not your happiest moments. Tragedies even. Struggles, betrayals, difficult breakups, challenges, pain and suffering, right? The things that make us who we are, the things that we can rebound from stronger, a phrase that I've heard used a lot is post-traumatic growth. The things that have made us who we are, that we wouldn't, I know a lot of people who've had cancer who tell me they wouldn't trade the cancer for anything, that they felt it was the most valuable experience of their life, that what they had to do to overcome it or to live with it or to accommodate it changed their life in ways that made it so much richer and more fulfilling and more meaningful. And they felt like much deeper, more realized people than they had been beforehand. So solving the problem deprives us of the chance to get something even better than not having the problem. One of my favorite books, Never Split the Difference, about negotiation, by Chris Voss. He uses a phrase that my friend Josh Lajani loves to quote: "Don't be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't take something better." So in this case, we're not negotiating necessarily with another person, although often we are, but we're negotiating with life itself, with ourselves, to say, I can do better than just solve the problem. I can use this problem in such a way that I can look back and say, boy, I'm glad this happened. This looked like a problem and it turned into an opportunity. And the way we do that is by asking that question: what's the outcome that I want? Now, as I said, the first thing that's going to come up for you is, some version of, I want them gone. I want them fired. I want them made my employee so I can control their every move. Because maybe they are good at a bunch of stuff, but you just can't stand the cowboy emails. You just want control. So instead of just saying, okay, well, the outcome I want is not to have the problem, ask the question again and see what comes up when you ask it a second time. And one way to do this is, okay, if I didn't have the problem, what would I have instead? What would I want instead? So now your brain starts to think, well, what do I really want here? So in this case, I want a unified effort. I want us all on the same page. Right? In order to achieve what? I want us to be able to give valuable outreach that the client always wants. Right? What for? I want to be able to make sales of the right products to the right people, to fulfill our mission, to improve the world in some way with what we're selling. Right? So now all of a sudden, we're feeling a little bit of a different energy entering the picture. Right? We're starting to feel that there's things we could move towards. And at this point, there's no clear connection between what we say we want, these lofty outcomes, these wonderful things, and the problem. And that's precisely the point. We want to feel like, okay, this is a completely different conversation. This is unrelated in some way to the problem. And we just think about where am I going? So rather than I'm just going to leave the house, I'm going to walk down to the beach. Here I am. I've been walking for a little while on the crushed gravel promenade, which is next to the cobblestone or stone promenade. So I'm going to head down, get a little bit closer to the beach now. And you're going to start to be able to hear conversations of passers-by. And maybe if there's about, maybe 70 or 80 people in the water. It's still cold at the end of May. There's some intrepid folks who are out in the short breakers. You hear some sandals scraping. So we've got this new question, which is unrelated seemingly to the problem. What do I really want? And so now once you have this idea that okay, there's some outcome that I want to go for that's just this is what I want to get. Now, in order to tie it back to the problem so that we can actually get there, we're going to use the problem almost like a slingshot. I'm thinking of that scene in The Martian starring Matt Damon, where if you haven't seen it, pause the podcast and go watch the movie and then come back, where there's an issue where they find out that he's alive. They left him on Mars because they thought he was dead, but they find out he's alive and they have to come back, but it's going to take way too long to dock on Earth and then create a new thing to send him back. And they decide to use the Earth's gravity to slingshot the ship, so around the Earth and then slingshot back toward Mars. So the very gravity that would pull the spaceship in and keep it from leaving now becomes the means by which they can get back and save his life. So the way we turn the problem into that kind of gravitational force to get to this desired outcome is to make the outcome clear and specific so that we actually have a picture, we have a mental picture of what we're going for, as opposed to a vague statement like, I want us all to work together. So the question there is, if you hear yourself say, the outcome I want is for us all to get along, right? You are trying to enlist your unconscious mind to get it for you, right? Because we're not trying to, we're going to use our intellect, but we really want to rely on some intuition and the unconscious mind that kind of drives our behavior anyway. And it doesn't really understand abstract concepts. So it understands pictures. It understands sights and smells. It understands very, very concrete things. So we want to turn the outcome into essentially a movie or a sensory experience, which the subconscious mind can get behind. The second thing, well, we already talked about that was the second thing. The first thing was the outcome needs to be positive. It has to be a yes instead of a not no. The second thing is clear and specific. And the third is meaningful. So when you say the outcome, it kind of excites you. That's why in our book, Peter Bregman and I talk about it as an energizing outcome. An outcome, even when you say it, you feel a little frisson, a little tingle of, oh, I want that. You know, that's a sign that your body has energy reserves that are willing to be deployed for it. So here I am now walking along the Fergata Beach. It's one of the largest beaches. I could smell all the fried stuff from the Chiringuito. Then you must be able to hear a couple of guys playing with the paddles and the little rubber ball. And I'm heading toward the main tourist area of town. So meaningful, right? It's that your body will tell you, yeah, I'm willing to spend energy on this. Right? So I was listening to a talk on depression by one of my teachers, Tori Olds, who appears on the podcast. If you search out Tori in the search bar on plantyourself.com, you'll find the interview I did with her. And she was talking about a biological theory of depression. Like, why would we have depression? Why would our biology have that feature, right? It's like, like if you had a button on the wall of your home and you push the buttons and it just like drops the power to everything by 90%. Like your lights dim, your dishwasher goes really slowly, the trash compactor can't grind anything. And this is like a feature. You're like, why, who designed that? Who put in that feature? It's kind of the question, like who designed us to be able to have depression? And Tori's take on this, and it's based on a lot of biological and psychological research, is that depression is basically one of the mechanisms the brain uses to manage energy. That the brain's main job is basically budgeting. Right? Saying how much energy should go into this or that. How much energy should I put into seeking food today? Well, the brain does calculations, and if the brain thinks that it's going to be a bad bet, that you're not going to get the calories back, it might like make you feel hopeless. Like, oh, I don't want to go out and go on that hunt because it feels like I'm not going to it's just not going to be worth it. The chances of getting the big animal are too low. There's too many people to have to share it with. It's going to be, too far away. Oh, what time is it? 3 dings, 2:45 on the big old church clock. And so the brain is like, its basic job is managing energy, making predictions about what kind of energy expenditures will be good, what kind of energy expenditures will be bad. And so depression is a way of getting us to stop doing things that aren't going to pay off. So it's a kind of a fuse that can break the circuitry that is powering something that the brain feels is going to be unwise. And the brain gets us to move, the mind, more generally, gets us to move, gets us to do things by creating feelings. So if the mind wants us to reproduce, it'll make us horny. If the mind wants us to eat, it'll make us feel hungry. If the mind wants us to run away from a predator, it'll make us feel fear. If the mind wants us to bite a competitor, it'll make us feel anger. And if the mind wants us to stop doing something that it thinks is ill-advised, a waste of energy, it will make us depressed. It will make us feel hopeless. So that's an aside, but it kind of highlights this idea that when you have a meaningful outcome, and it's one that's actually within your power to achieve, your body will respond. It will respond in a way that when you're paying attention to your physiology, you can feel. So now I'm walking up the steps. So there's a break wall here. So I'll stop for a second. You can hear the waves splashing against the rock. Sometimes it's gentle, and sometimes there's spray. And if you want to take a moment with me, we can smell the fishy, salty smell, ocean brine smell in the air as the water droplets bounce off the rocks and the sea foam turns white. Here comes a big one, I think. All right. Predicted that one. Okay, so we've got the three elements of an energizing outcome. We've got positive, we've got clear and specific, so that your subconscious can get behind it, can understand what you're talking about, and can begin to formulate, actual concrete steps. Oh, here's a street performer. She's got holding a guitar, and she's got a trumpet. Listen for a few seconds. It makes it in the podcast. I'm going to have to give her some coins. It's only fair. Oh, the Beatles.
Out of men.
That is nice. Let it be. That's a great theme for a different podcast, not the one about going out and achieving your desired outcomes, right? So, oh my gosh, now she's trumpeting. Very cool. Okay, so where were we? All right, and it's meaningful, so that the energy systems actually have the energy to do what needs to be done. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, can I map this onto traditional Chinese medicine? And the idea of in Qigong is that there's three dantians, three energy centers. There is I'm having trouble walking without getting into people's pictures now. So there is the lower dantian, the vitality center, just a couple of finger widths below the navel, which is sort of that meaningful piece, the energy. And then there is the middle dantian, to the heart center, which is about compassion, love. What can we map that onto? Meaningful. No, maybe it doesn't work. Anyway, there's the upper dantian, which is about wisdom. So you want to have your wisdom and your love and your vitality all aligned. I think that turned into a fun aside rather than a useful mapping. But we miss 100% of the shots you don't take, as my daughter Yal likes to quote Wayne Gretzky, the Canadian hockey player. So once we have those three, we have the desired outcome that's positive, clear, and meaningful. Sit with it for a little bit and just allow it to begin to take shape in your mind and let your mind, because it's clear, your mind is now, you've basically asked it a question. You've basically said to your subconscious, here is what I want. That's the clarity of it, combined with the energy. And you don't have to do anything now. Your subconscious is already been deployed looking for ways to get there, looking for strategies, and because it's a positive thing and it's a future thing, it's using all the facilities you have at your disposal, all, thinking about what other people can help, what are ways that I could grow, what are some resources, what are some strategies, what are some low risk tests that I could make. Your subconscious is already beginning to do that. And let it do it for a little while. Go for a run, go play Wordle or strands or connections or draw a picture, take a shower, And then when you come back to it, when you come back to the problem, now I want you to look at it through the context of the desired outcome. So now you're going to look at the problem and say, where is the opportunity in this problem to achieve the desired outcome? Where is the Earth's gravity that could suck us back in that we're going to use to slingshot? So I haven't planned this out yet, but let's take a look at the example that I've been giving you. So we're now on San Sebastian Beach, which is the longest, I think, of all the beaches here in my town, with a lot of people tanning out here and kids playing ball, and there's restaurants, outdoor restaurants with umbrellas to my left, and people selling beach towels and soliciting where they can give you a massage for 30 euros. And there's a beautiful kind of yachty sailboat docked out there. So we're going to say, let's take that example of the coworker, the colleague who is getting in the way. So the outcome that I want, let's say, is really, coordinated campaigns. Let's say the right thing to the right person at the right time. And really, I can sort of see the queue of automated emails. I can see the process whereby when a prospect says yes to something, we then switch to a manual reach out. All sorts of, I'm not going to kind of give you the nitty gritty details, but to give you a sense of the level of detail that my subconscious would want in order to begin manifesting it. And now I can see the problem is that Joey, let's call him Joey for no reason whatsoever, could sabotage it by sending out these other emails. So before I talk to Joey, I want to do a little bit of thinking about what Joey is trying to achieve. In other words, what outcomes is Joey already pursuing? Because we tend to think of other people's actions. We tend to think of other people do something that we don't like. They're bad, they're wrong, they're stupid, they're mean, right? And yet, like when we do things that other people don't like, we were tired or cranky or we made a mistake or we just weren't thinking or something, we don't know what came over us. So it's called in psychology, the fundamental attribution error. This idea that other people are either bad or completely irrational or crazy and unpredictable. And we make sense. If we do something wrong, it's because of a very good reason. So we want to try to reverse that. We want to reverse our thinking. So what's Joey trying to accomplish? And let's say we come up with a range of possibilities, but notice that the first one we're going to come up with is almost always like the least charitable. He's a hog. He just wants all the glory for himself. He never read the book on permission marketing, and he's just, in way over his head and doing a bunch of stuff he doesn't understand because he doesn't know how to do his job. That's all going to come out. And then as we get that out, we start thinking about what are some more charitable explanations for Joey's behavior. What does he think? How would he describe what he's trying to do? He probably wouldn't say, it might, but it probably wouldn't say, I'm trying to sabotage this company and everyone in it. I'm trying to get everyone fired. I'm trying to take us down. I don't think it's a very good product. I don't think anyone should buy it. So I'm doing everything I can to sabotage our marketing. Probably not going to say that. It's possible. That could go on the list. But the truth of what Joey thinks he's doing and why he's doing it is going to be much closer to a charitable explanation than an uncharitable one. So once we've come up with one, we don't have to get it right. But if we're going to approach Joey, we have to come from a place of an assumption of goodwill. All right, this is coming from the work of the Gottman Institute. John Gottman is a couples therapist who became famous for allegedly being able to predict whether couples would get divorced within 10 years after watching them for 5 minutes. And there's a few things, like 5 tells that couples are headed for disastrous relationships. But the most important was there an assumption of goodwill? That when the other person did something that you didn't like, did you assume that they were trying out to get you? Or did you assume that they just weren't paying attention or made a mistake or had a bad day? So you're going to approach Joey, I'm going to approach Joey with the assumption of positive intent, the more formal way of putting it. And once I have that in my heart, in my energy field, I can approach Joey in a very different way than if I'm coming in, even, thinking, not saying, but just thinking, Joey, why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Don't you know that you're screwing everything up? Because then now I'm curious, right? I have this theory of positive intent, and I don't know if it's right or not. So when I approach Joey, I can then test out my theory and I can engage my curiosity. And curiosity is one of the great drivers of dopamine. It's one of the sort of peak experiences that we get that makes us want more. So, you think about curiosity that gets exploited in a page turner or a cliffhanger ending or playing a video game where you want to know what's going to happen next. So curiosity, along with, food and sex, is a driver of dopamine. It's good. You can see clearly, if you think about it for a minute, you get the evolutionary basis of why curiosity is a good thing, at least on a species-wide level. It's always good to have a few people who aren't so curious and kind of, stay home and play it safe. But on the whole, curiosity is what drives innovation. It's what drives the search for new solutions, for better opportunities. So, and I think I'll end about here because I don't want to give you too many things to think about all at once. The way you indulge your curiosity is by starting having a conversation with Joey and you ask him that question. What are you going for here? What's your desired outcome? When you send these emails, what's the hope? What are you trying to get to? What do you hope will happen for us? And if you can ask that question in a non-judgmental way, but with genuine curiosity, you're going to do a bunch of things. You're going to get Joey thinking in those terms. And so if there is a problem, right, if Joey then comes to the realization that what he's doing is actually counterproductive, it will be based on the gap between what he wants and what he's getting, rather than you being angry at Joey for not doing what you think he should do. He won't be responding childlike to your criticism or advice or motivation or cajoling or encouragement. He will be responding based on his own motivational system, his own energetic drive to accomplish things that he wants to accomplish and gain resources that he wants to gain. I'm leaving the beach area and walking up little side street uh, into the old city now. So there's people walking, talking quietly. It's got a much more subdued attitude and environment right now. It's also in the shade. We've been in the sun for about half an hour now, so now we're in the shade quietly. I'm going to pause. There's people right up ahead of me who look like they're having a quiet conversation, so I'm going to give them a little bit of space. So that's my sermon on this amazing question of what's the outcome that you're going for, to ask it of yourself and to ask it of other people. And then once you ask that question and you get a clear answer, and it doesn't have to be the right answer, but even any answer that will start moving you in a direction, you can then iterate and say, well, I thought I wanted this, but actually this would be even better. I thought I wanted just a détente with Joey, but I see he's got some great ideas, and if we work together, I think we can make our stuff even more powerful. Or boy, he's really into this new video email technology that can play right in their Outlook, and I hadn't played with that before, and right. So now you start to come up with better and better solutions than you would have had if you just addressed the problem in and of itself. So this one question: what am I going for here? And it applies not just in business; it applies to pretty much anything, because it's using the brain rather than trying to fight against it. It's using the brain's, that system we talked about of assessing energy expenditure. Right. So it could be I'm going to a restaurant. What do I want to eat? Well, what's the outcome that I want? Right? Is it to feel really full right now on sugary junk food? All right, because there's a part of me that wants that, because that's in my brain. But there's also the part of me that thinks about the future, that does long-term strategic planning. And that's the part that, of course, gets turned off when you're in fight or flight, because that's all about immediate survival. You don't really think about, 2 weeks from now or 2 months or 2 years from now if you're in fight or flight, because your brain codes that as immediate lethal threat. So to shift the question, what's the outcome I want, puts your brain in a state whereby stress goes down and the ability to make better long-term decisions goes up. If somebody said something, if you're in a relationship with someone and they say something to you that you don't like, you can react based on what they just said, which is the past. Or you can ask that question. You can start practicing asking that question. What's the outcome I want here? And then you might have a very different response. You might respond with curiosity. Hey, what's going on for you right now? Or, ooh, it sounds like I just did something to upset you. Or, hey, let me tell you, let me express what I'm feeling right now based on what you said. And can we talk about it? Right? And these all might likely to be much more fruitful than simply reacting out of anger or fawning out of fear, right? Or just slamming the door and going away to avoid. So that's it for today. It's now a little bit after 3. Hope this has been fun. If it is, this is a fun thing for me to do. I don't know how much fun it is for the people around me, where I was just standing here just sort of talking to the air. But if you enjoy this kind of podcast, let me know. Drop me a line, hj@flightyourself.com, and I can do more if you want specific topics to talk about. I would love to make this as much of a dialogue as possible, even though it's just me. So let's see. Other news, I mentioned that my bike accidents. I've not done much exercise. I did a little bit of a rehab workout on the beach. I signed up for Spanish Ultimate Division II Nationals in Burgos in July. So hopefully I'll be rehabbed by then. It's on grass, so I have to do some running on grass. And I see my kids walking down the street. So as soon as they see me, I expect them to make some noise, and I'm going to sign off. So as always, be well, my friends.
All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, The Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons. Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Melissa Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Tina Scharf, Tina Ahern, Jen Filikanovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious Michelle X, Elsbeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Kelly Cameron, Janet Selby, Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Bennett, Gila Sert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesner, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Val Linneman, Nick Harper, Bandana Charlie, Molly Levine, The Inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, The Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Scharf, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Koppel, Julian Watkins, Breed O'Connell, Sharon Hirschman, Linda Ayad, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzinwa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Olakoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Morani, Karen and Joe Crabtree, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Peter W. Evans, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Laurie Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Emily Iconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Leenan, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bilberry Elf, Marjorie Lewis, Tricia Adams, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarit Hagen, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Param Ganchi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Naik, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, Michael Lushton, Sarah Johnson, Catherine Floyd, for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.